Segregation, isolation, solitary confinement, control unit, special housing unit, intensive management unit. These are all names for maximum custody. Goes by the whole. Regardless of the term used, maximum custody units represent the most restrictive and expensive setting in corrections. It entails holding inmates in 8x10 cells, sometimes smaller, for 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. Inmates are restrained and escorted to recreation yards and showers. Maximum custody is not often discussed in public, and as a result, the inmates housed there and the staff who work there become invisible. What happens inside is a mystery to the public. Let me take you inside. According to a 2005 census conducted by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, there were over 80,000 inmates housed in some form of maximum custody throughout the United States. 80,000. However, there are varying degrees of isolation that exist, with each state different in its maximum custody practices. These inconsistencies include which inmates are placed in maximum custody, how long they are housed there, and what activities they have access to while there. One aspect that maximum custody units do have in common is an emphasis on containment. Maximum containment. Maximum custody, the end of the road in corrections, is comprised of the most difficult individuals in the system. It is sometimes believed that the inmates housed in maximum custody will never be released from prison. In truth, the majority will return to our streets. What is supposed to be different about these individuals except for simply the passage of time? Research shows that inmates releasing directly from maximum custody to the community without opportunities for therapeutic interventions and socialization are more likely to violently reoffend. When I started working in corrections in 2009 as a psychologist in maximum custody, I had believed that I'd be working exclusively with those inmates considered to be the worst of the worst. And while I did encounter inmates that had a history of violence, I quickly realized that inmates ended up in maximum custody for other reasons too. There are inmates with mental health issues and inmates that have protection concerns. Together, these groups are sometimes known as the mad, the bad, and the sad. It is often believed that therapeutic programming cannot take place in maximum custody, but I'm here today to say that therapeutic programming in maximum custody is not only possible, it is necessary. When I started working as a psychologist, there was very few opportunities for therapeutic programming available in maximum custody. All of my interactions took place with either a steel door or thick visitation room window between us. In fact, the only therapeutic programming on offer were paper worksheets delivered through the unit mail system for inmates to complete alone in their cells. This all changed in 2013 when our maximum custody unit received 8 programming chairs. These chairs, built at the Washington State Penitentiary, created a therapeutic environment without compromise to safety and security. For the first time, inmates could be escorted to the same room, maximum custody inmates could be escorted to the same room, be restrained to the chairs, and interact with one another. Instructors were needed to facilitate this interaction, and mental health staff were called upon to help. But so were custody officers. That's right, custody officers. The men and women that wear blue uniforms and hold the keys. Their jobs have long been viewed as one-dimensional, ensuring the safety and security of the institution, prepared to use force if necessary. I've overheard officers in maximum custody describe their roles as room service. On a typical day, they're responsible for inmate escorts, delivery of food, removal of garbage, and the exchange of clothing and linen. An officer told me, in my job, I can't see the fruits of my labor, and that the only good day was one in which nobody gets hurt. Now, with officers in the role of instructors, walls are breaking down. Officers, the staff that have always spent the most time with inmates, are now recognized as agents of change. A unit sergeant that works as an instructor told me that he now has a connection with the inmates in his groups. He now has more opportunities to interact with inmates in a positive way. Whereas once the relationship could have been viewed as cops and robbers, officers are now viewed as sources of support and encouragement. There is now the presence of hope in the system and a recognition that therapeutic programming contributes to safety and security. Officers have been empowered and recognize that they have the potential to affect positive behavior change during every interaction that they have with inmates. Officers now have the opportunity to catch inmates doing something good. Both staff and inmates behave differently in the presence of a barrier. There is the opportunity for vulnerability and human connection when those same barriers are removed. I've had the opportunity to shake hands with and congratulate inmates as they successfully promote in programming. On one occasion, I extended my hand to an inmate and noticed that there was a very long pause before he finally accepted my hand and shook it. When I asked him about that moment, he said he was trying to remember the last time that somebody had extended their hand to him in congratulations. He said he could not recall any previous such occasion, either in prison or elsewhere. There had been initial concerns about what would happen when maximum custody inmates with mental illness, protection concerns, and histories of violence were placed in the same room. Would it be chaos? Would inmates attempt to harm each other and staff? The reality has been quite the opposite, with inmates taking full positive advantage of the opportunities for therapeutic programming now afforded to them. While the programming is new, we have already observed significant changes. Inmates who had once repeatedly violated the rules slowly start to demonstrate the skills taught through programming. We have had inmates released from maximum custody and succeed in less restrictive settings. An inmate who has just spent the majority of the previous 20 years in maximum custody is now on the verge of releasing to a less restrictive setting. When I asked him about this transition, he told me, without programming, I would have been stuck. The informal aspects of programming have proven to be just as important as the formal. Inmates are observed talking to each other both before and after groups. An inmate described the other participants in his groups as his support system. He said that their support encourages him to make better choices and to think about his future, a life outside of maximum custody. I believe that here in Washington, I've had a glimpse of the future. The future is more therapeutic programming in maximum custody. The future is involving custody officers in the delivery of that programming. It is clear that how we treat inmates in maximum custody has an impact on staff, the prison environment, and ultimately, our communities. We must do our most intensive work with our most challenging population. The alternative is to warehouse people. And that is not a legacy that I want to be a part of. That is not how I want to be remembered. I am calling for the reform of maximum custody. I am challenging the corrections community to reconsider the purpose of maximum custody. We have an opportunity, we have it right now, to move from maximum containment to maximum programming. Maximum custody could thus be deliberately used for the purposes of rehabilitation and assisting inmates in their transition to less restrictive settings. I am calling for all of us to come together for the purpose of sharing our best and most promising practices. Together, we can focus less on locking people down and more on lifting them up. Thank you for this opportunity.